All right, again, thank you everyone for joining. We are going to get started here with the Watson Analytics Getting Started seminar that we're running for you today. As many of you know, we've moved out of beta, so I apologize for the slight error in the slide deck. We will get that updated for the next one. Just to let you know that there are going to be some points in this presentation where you may see things or hear about things that are futures. We are rolling in a continuous development and continuous rollout of new features within Watson Analytics. So some of the things that you'll be seeing may not be there today when you log in, but might be there as early as Monday. Of myself, John Coulthard. I work in the product design and experience team. I spend all my time talking to customers, partners, and IBMers about how Watson Analytics is working for them and how we can improve upon it. The objectives for today's call, or the agenda for today's call, is to go over the objectives, talk a little bit about samples and tutorials, how do you load data, look at explorations and predictions, and show you some of the newest features that just went live this week for Assemble. So at the end of this session, what I'm hoping you're going to be able to do for yourselves is to load up your own data, start exploring it, using our predictions, and assembling your own dashboards. I'm also hoping to show you where you can go to get help and to provide feedback for us. All right, moving right into the demonstration. I'm going to go back to the start and show you what the welcome screen looks like. So here we are at the welcome screen. What you can see right here in the welcome screen is I've got a video on the top left-hand side. You can play that, learn a little bit more about these features and functions that we're going to be talking about. You can also see that we have some action tiles here: explore, predict, and assemble, all enabled here for you. And down in the bottom, you'll see that I've got a bunch of different information tiles. I'm going to show you how to access the tutorials. Simply go onto the filter, scroll down, and pick up tutorials and samples. That will immediately change your screen and show you all of the different samples and tutorials that we have. For every sample or tutorial, there is a video showing you exactly how the information can be used. And for some of the information sets, you'll even be able to click on the information dialog box and be able to actually open a sample workbook. In this case, the short-term supply and demand matching example. This is a bike sharing program, and it's showing us a prediction. We'll get more into navigation shortly. Going back to the home screen, or the welcome screen. At any point in time, you can add your own data simply by clicking on the Add button. And from here, you can either drag and drop your files from a Windows Explorer or from your Finder if you're on a Mac, or you can just click on the button and immediately go into your Explorer situation and find the information that you would like to load. Just for time of today's seminar, I won't go through the loading itself, but I'll show you some of the data that we loaded and start playing with it. So I'm going to unfilter, or go to look at all of my tiles, and I'm going to start working on my auto example. As you can see here, I've got a lot of different information already populated into my environment that I've been working on. So when you come in the next time after today and you started loading data, you started doing explorations, creating dashboards or predictions, you will start seeing them show up. You can always use the search to go ahead and look for specific example sets that you've been working on. So what I'll do here is I'll click on my auto sales sample data set. You can see here it tells me a little bit of information about it. I loaded this data roughly a week ago, and I now have the ability to go in and start doing one of three major activities: exploration, prediction, or creating an assembled view. Let's start with exploration. My assumption is most of you that are listening to this are going to want to explore your data before you start getting into prediction. If you really know your data set very well, by all means, start with prediction. What you can see really quickly here is that what Watson Analytics has done is it's actually driven me into a set of example tiles based on this data set. And for any of these data sets, it's showing me a little bit of a view of what the type of chart or graph might look like. Now what's great about this is it gives me the starting point. So it's looked at all of that information, all of the data that I've loaded in, and it's now giving me that ability to go and look at that data in a very easy to use fashion. So I can click on any one of these tiles, or I can simply go in and start asking it some questions. So what I may want to understand is, what is the opportunities amounts by size of client? Might be one question I want to ask, and it's going to go ahead and say, well, what's the breakdown of my opportunity amount by client size by employee count? And I can quickly click on a tile, and it's going to bring me into a visualization. Now it's dynamically created this visualization based on the information that it has available to it. Right away, it's showing me that it's a tree map. It's dynamically picked the specific type of view that it should probably look like, but I can change those visualization types very quickly by clicking on the chart icon down at the bottom right, I apologize. Now here, it tells me the other recommended visualizations, a bar chart, or it shows me that there are other visualization types available. At any point in time, if I want to change my perspective of what I'm looking at, I can simply click on anything that's hyperlinked in blue, and I can go and pick other fields of my data set. And this will dynamically change all the information that's available. So now instead of client size by employee count, I might want to change this to client size by revenue. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and you'll see that it starts changing my information set right away. Obviously, I can see that the biggest area where I'm selling, this auto parts manufacturer is selling, is into organizations that have less than $1 million in turnover for their own businesses. So very much we're catering to small and medium-sized businesses. So that's great to know. I can now start working through and doing some more analysis. How do I do that? Well, I might look at the insight bar up at the top. And the insight bar tells me a little bit more information about what's happening in my organization. As you can see here, Little Rock, Arkansas seems to have quite a lot of revenue potential. Seattle and Salem have a little bit less so. So maybe I'll go and look at those. So I can see information by state. Other information that's in here, I can look at the top sales regions in my business. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and add that page to my exploration. And right away, it goes and shows me more information and makes it available to me. So really quickly, in the first minute of being in the application, I've started to explore all of that data. Let's say that I'm happy with that data set and I'm happy with that exploration. I can now go ahead and start saving my information. So I'm going to create a save, and I'm just going to put in John's view of the world. And I'm going to go ahead and save that information out. Now when I do that, other features are immediately exposed to me. So the minute I've saved information into the application, I get the ability to now look down at the bottom right and actually pin information. So as I'm going through my various analysis, my various steps through my analytics, I can actually pin my favorites. So I'm going to quickly pin that favorite. And you'll notice up at the top it tells me my favorite's been pinned. And at any point in time, I can go back and look at that same information and where I've pinned it just by clicking on the pin icon up beside my name. That's going to be great for going forward in other types of things like assembling a dashboard. So very quickly, added some information. I can now add new pages. I can go look at my information in different ways. I might want to look at my competitors by region. And again, just very simply add a new page. So I can keep going through my analytic discovery and at any point in time save that information. So I've now saved that exploration, and I'm going to go back to the main screen, back to the welcome. From here, what you'll see very quickly is my tile's been updated and created, given me today's date. If I'm ever curious and I want to filter these or sort these a slightly different way, I can easily do that. I can sort it, and my current default is based on last modified. You may want to look at these based on when you created them, or just a nice alphabetical view. And you can also filter, like I showed you with tutorials and samples. You can filter and look at explorations, predictions, or views. So again, very quickly, we've come in, we've looked at some information and data, and we've now started to start an exploration process. To show you how some of these other pieces of information work, I can also very quickly click on the Predict action tile up at the top right, and I can go and create a prediction on that exact same data set. You can see I've loaded that data a number of different times, and just to speed along this seminar, I won't go through all the steps of doing the creation, but I'll show you what the screens look like. So I'm going to click on that same data set we were just looking at, and the system will automatically prompt me to do a few things. It will prompt me to put in a new name for this prediction. So this will be, John's sample number 2, or in this case maybe 25. And it's also dynamically tried to determine what types of targets I want to predict against, or where I want to look for relationships. And in this case, that may not be the most appropriate based on the data I have. So I can very quickly click on the drop-down and go and pick all of the from any of the other fields that are in my data set. In this particular case, I may want to look at opportunity result, whether I've won or lost that business, and that might be the prediction that I want to do. So I simply click on the opportunity result, it will show up here, and now I can create my prediction. Again, from a time perspective, we'll just skip ahead a little bit and fast forward and go and look at that exact same data set in one that I've already created for us before we started this session. So as I transfer over to that data set, what you'll see right away, that prediction, it's showing me some interesting information. What it's showing me is I've got a spiral diagram. This is the default view for all of my predictions that I create. And right in the dead center, it's showing me that opportunity result. So again, in this data set, it's a win or a loss. And if I've won the business, then, or if I've used that as the target, rather, opportunity result as the target, it will then show me how close the relative fields are in predicting out an outcome. In this case, revenue from my clients in the past 2 years is a predictor of opportunity result. So whether I win or lose depends a little bit on, in a significant amount, by 80.5%, based on whether I've had revenue from this particular client in the last 2 years. Some of the other ones include total days identified to qualified, meaning in my business, whether I've identified it quickly and moved it into a qualified sales opportunity is another particular predictive strength. On the right-hand side here, you can see I can cycle through all the different visualizations that are pre-populated when you create a prediction, and that allows me to very quickly look for other interesting information sets. One of the things that you will probably want to do is understand a little bit more about your data. So before I go a little bit further, I want to click on the data quality report, and I want to show you how Watson Analytics starts moving this data forward. So as I loaded in that data, as I created this prediction, what the application did is it went through and it scored the information, and you can see some of the text here telling us how we've actually done some of that scoring. This particular data set has 157,000 records in it. It has 19 fields. There are 8 fields, if I just scroll down a little bit, that have interesting values because they've got outliers, and 9 fields with skewed distribution. I can very quickly see the data sets and how it's looking at them and how it's ranked them on a field-by-field basis. This gives me some comfort that my data is not completely sparse and may not be usable for a prediction. A 64 is in the moderate to good range of data quality, and obviously as you start sliding towards green, it's a little bit better for prediction. Even though you may have low quality scores when you start loading your own data, it may still be suitable for exploration. There's a big difference in exploring your data and predicting information. And when I show you the community link at the end of this session, please go there and learn a little bit more about some of those differences in how we rank and score your data. So coming back to the default view of my prediction, again, if I had just created this, this is exactly what I would see when I first come into it. A little bit more about the navigation for you. You can see on the left-hand side here, I've got a predictive level chooser. Now what this allows me to do is, by default, we start you with what are the single fields that influence the result or the target. And in this case, you can see the ones I've got here in blue and green. Revenue from my clients in the past 2 years. But when you're working with predictions, what you really want to do is start moving towards a more predictive model. And to do that, what we do dynamically for you is we start interrogating the single field and then 2 field combinations. So if I click on that, you'll see that my little orbs are getting closer and closer. I now have 81.2% in terms of predictive strength. And what it's done is it's looked at all of that information, those 19 fields, and see how they relate to opportunity result. And what it's doing in the background in running all of its algorithms is telling me that the total days identified through qualified and the revenue from my clients in the past 2 years create the strongest level of prediction. And again, on the right hand side, I can navigate through all the different views that I might want to go and see. What I'm really interested in is how the system created the most comprehensive or the most predictive view within this data set. And so what I do is I click on combination in the predictive level chooser, and I very quickly can see that it's moved the needle again. Now this case only another %, but what this is telling me is it's not just about a single field or 2 fields coming together. In order to really give me the best view of what is predicting my outcome of a win or a loss, I actually need to take 10 fields out of the 19 and add them together. And the system's done that dynamically for me and created the model dynamically. Now before we move on, I'm going to pin this information as well. This might be something interesting that we want to look at later on. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that information. And then I'm going to go in and look at some of the details. So I quickly go in, either by hovering over or using the tiles on the right hand side. I can quickly go in and look at some more details of this information. Now in this particular case, it by default brought me up into a decision tree. When I get into the most complex or the more predictive view of my information, of my model, it's going to dynamically try to build a decision tree for me. And the decision tree does take me through the pathways from all my information into the outcome. In this case, my opportunity result, which again, I'm looking for a win or a loss. Now I like looking at wins, so I'm going to start there. So very quickly, toggle the drop down, move to 1. And what I can now see very clearly is how I'm winning or where I'm winning. So what fields influence that win. And what we've done is gone even further to look at the top 5 decision rules that were used in order to understand that. And we've put little orbs with their number right beside the actual part of the tree. And so I can see 1, 2, and 4 very quickly. And if I shrunk this down a little bit, you'd see 3 and 5 as well. So I'm interested. What does this mean? Well, what it means is, if I hover over where I've got number 1, is that when I have revenue from my clients in the past 2 years between $50,000 and $500,000 in inventory that I've sold them, and I've moved them very, very quickly from qualified to identified, meaning they may have given me a phone call, they may have put a feeler out on my website, right? And I've now taken that action to call them and understand if there's actually an opportunity to sell them more of my parts. And if I do that quickly, in under 8 days, I'm very likely to win. So again, if I have already sold them $50,000 to $500,000 worth of parts in the last 2 years, and I move them quickly through the cycle, I have a high likelihood of winning. In addition, even when I don't move them very high, my second rule is when I have less than 50,000 in the last 2 years. Now to show you that maybe a little bit more from a easy to view perspective, let's go ahead and move this back to 1 so that we're looking at the same thing. We have the decision rules here. So I can very quickly look at those decision rules. Again, I may decide to pin that information and keep that for future use. And of course, why not look at the information in every possible way, and I can look at this in a nice word cloud. So I've gone through three things already. I've shown you where you go to add your own information and data. I've gone into exploration, and within exploration I've shown you things like natural language question and answer about your data and browsing the insight bar, and now we've done some review of how to use prediction. Now the last thing that we'll leave on is assembling all of that data into a nice and easy to use view. Now how do we do that? We use the assemble. Now again, I like showing you all the different ways that you can connect and explore your information. So again, I took that data when I did explore, I clicked here on the tile itself and went to explore. For predict, I clicked on predict, I cycled down, chose the data set, and we did the prediction. And now to do assemble, I'll show you the third way in order to start creating your own information sets. By clicking on the add button, again, here's where you go back, you could add some more data, or you can start looking at this information and assembling it into a nice dashboard view. So I quickly click on that. I'm going to start looking at my information, go and grab that same data, and I can look at it for lots of different data sets. We'll go ahead with the biggest data set that I have, and we're going to start. So what's great about the way that Watson Analytics works is it provides me lots of defaults out of the box. You saw that in exploration, you saw that in prediction, and now I'm showing it to you in the assembled views. Right away, out of the box, you can create from a template a dashboard that might be multiple tabbed or even an infographic. And the infographics are great if you've done a lot of pinning of information, a lot of favoriting, and you want to really call out and tell a story in a visual infographic. Now for today's purposes, I'm going to keep it very short and sweet and look at it in terms of a tabbed view. You'll also know in screens like this where we are starting to introduce to you beta features as you start working. So anytime you see the nice little purple, magenta within our world of assemble and it says beta, that's a feature yet to come. So go and try it out if you wish. But here we are, and I'll quickly create a new view. Maybe I'll start freeform and then move into a template. So I quickly just double click, and that will then take me into the creation. And there's lots of different things that I can now do within this view. Maybe the first thing I want to do is take my saved information or my pinned information and bring it forward. So on the first tab, I'm going to grab that spiral diagram that we liked, and I'm going to move it over. I'm going to put it really nicely, prominently right here. I'm going to grab that nice tree map that we pinned, and I'm going to put it right beside. So I'm literally, from the pin bar, I'm just going to drag and drop. System's going to work and go and grab me the latest information. Now let's clean this up a bit. You'll notice that as I'm moving things around, it's showing me how to snap them one to the other. We'll go and make this a little bit bigger, and there we go. I now have a nice first tab showing me those two pieces of information. But it doesn't just stop there. This is a way more powerful way for you to start building your dashboards. And what I mean by that, and how I'm going to show you that, is by going in and actually showing you right from scratch how to build a template and build up from the ground. So I'm going to select a new view, a template that has a couple of different quadrants for me, and I'm going to show you just how powerful Watson Analytics is at allowing you to work with your data set. I'm going to pull up the data grid just so that you can see it a little bit. This data tray is available as a feature in many of the different views that you might be looking at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drag some information around. So I'm going to start with actually maybe looking at, in that data set, I'm going to start looking at my opportunity amount. So same value, and just to show it to you how easy it is, I'm going to drag and drop it and put it as a maximum in that particular cell of my template. So wow, I've got $12 billion, almost $13 billion worth of opportunities in my system. That's pretty cool. Well, it goes even further. If I have things like state, or city, things like that. I can drag that right on top. And what Watson Analytics will do is it will dynamically look at that information, understand that there's a geospatial awareness inside the system, see that you've got state information there, and it's going to dynamically paste me in that same information in a beautiful map. Obviously, it picked the US because I'm using my US sales numbers, but any data in the world, the minute you have state or country, drag and drop, and away you go. You've got your information. So that's really cool. In seconds, I've created a nice little view here for myself. Now, of course, there's more information here that I want to start looking at. There's things like looking at what are my best sellers, maybe by category of supplies. So I'm going to drag that on. Now, as I drag that information on, as it pulls it back for me, it doesn't really show me a lot right away. But if I do the exact same thing, it now starts actually charting it. And if I go even further, I can now look at this and change the visualization. Again, dynamically we suggest a series of visualizations for you. But in this particular case, what I'm really interested in is a nice word cloud. So I'm going to put my word cloud in there, and I can see that in all of my opportunities, car accessories and performance non-auto are my two top sellers. Okay, that's interesting. That's very good to have information. Now, I might also have things like route to market. So where are things actually being sold? And again, I might want to do the same type of analysis, or I could even just use this as a filter. So I can dynamically click on it, and what you'll see is everything changes. All of these dynamically shape, size, etc., depending on the filter that I'm looking at. So I can just drag and drop all this information for me. I can take that same information set and maybe grab my opportunity result, so filter this even further. And I might want to filter this, obviously, this whole thing on a win or a loss. So what happens when I win? And maybe I want to look at my supply group. And instead of having the group there, I'll go and pull the subgroup in. And I'll change that visualization again, just back to my word cloud for a second. And now I can see very quickly inside my opportunities, okay, when I select car accessories, it shows me the accessories and the wins, and I can see exterior accessories and garage care are my two top sales. Now, of course, I said this was going to be a dashboard, so obviously I want to very quickly change the theme and make this a little bit prettier. So I'm going to go ahead and change my theme for my whole dashboard. I may want to take all of these individual elements, and I might want to change the styling, get rid of the background fill color, and if we had enough time here, we'd go in and also add an image as a background. I am looking to see that we are right at the top of the half hour. And what I'll ask right now is for one of my colleagues just to prompt me with any of the questions and answers, and we'll start that process. 1 second, please. None?
So I've taken care of the ones to let him show the community really quickly.
Okay, so my colleague has spent time answering away, which is great. So why don't we take a look at the community itself? So in order to get to the community, there's two different ways. One is from the little question icon. The other is just to go to community.watsonanalytics.com. And immediately you'll see the community. You'll see a series of information sets prominently displayed for you. I mentioned the whole data quality and data loading. It's a resource for you. You can see that we've got our discussions, an expert blog, and at any point in time, you can look at the various details underneath. I'm just going to go in and look at the discussions and see what's happening in the world today. So lots of interesting things happening in the world. You'll see lots of answers, ranking them by views. Very quick and easy to go and look at my community and the information that's there. So again, very, very quickly, we've done this in 28 or 29 minutes. We've come into the application, into the service of Watson Analytics. We've loaded some data, we've explored some data, predicted some data, and assembled a really pretty dashboard of that exact same information by doing natural gestures like drag and drop of information.